It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. It's time for The Verdict.
Hello again and welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Every Wednesday night we're right here to discuss current events and issues, and we have one of our favorite guests back tonight.
Yes, tonight we've got Drew Edmonson, the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma, the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the state of Oklahoma, and we're pleased that he would visit us again to talk about something that's very current, very timely going on out in the legislature. As Chief Law Enforcement Officer, the Attorney General has a responsibility to all citizens to enforce the laws in Oklahoma as he sees needed. And there's some efforts out in the legislature to curb those law enforcement powers and to require some prior permission from some people before he can bring an action. And that's just some of what we're going to talk about tonight. But I think it will be interesting. There are serious constitutional questions about it, and it's getting a lot of debate.
Always an interesting guest. Drew Edmonson next on The Verdict.
Coming up Thursday on Hello Oklahoma, three-time reigning world championship roper Trevor Brazil will be here. We'll talk to him about his upcoming competition at the Lazy E Arena. We continue spring cleaning week, find out how to make the most out of your garage space. And tax season is just around the corner. We have a few helpful tips before you file. Plus all your top headlines and weather details with meteorologist Brady Bruce. Watch Hello Oklahoma every weekday morning from 6:30 to 8 on KSVI.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Go ahead, I'll be right there. Wouldn't it be great if life worked like this parking meter? I could keep putting quarters in and stay here with my family forever. Of course, life doesn't work that way. That's why I bought life insurance from Colonial Penn to help make sure my final expenses won't become my family's problem. And it costs me about $1/4 a day.
For about $1/4 a day, just $7.95 a month per unit, Colonial Penn offers guaranteed acceptance life insurance to people ages 50 to 85. These days, funeral costs alone average over $6,000. Now you can get help with no medical exam, no health questions. And the rate of $7.95 a month per unit is guaranteed never to increase.
Call 1-800-580-3638 to receive free information in the mail. That number again is 1-800-580-3638 or visit our website at colonialpenn.com.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett, Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce our guest.
We are very pleased tonight to welcome back the Honorable Drew Edmonson, the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. Drew is a 3-term Attorney General. He, before that, was a 3-term prosecutor in Muskogee County as the District Attorney. He's a native Oklahoman. He is a former president of the National Association of Attorneys General, which is quite a prestigious honor if you're in that Attorney General position. He was selected when he was a DA as the outstanding district attorney in Oklahoma in 1985, and also served as president of the Oklahoma District Attorneys Association. This is his 5th visit on The Verdict, and Drew, we're really pleased to have you back.
Well, it's great to be back. This is the highlight of my career. I'm just tickled to be here.
I'm going to have to add that to your introduction next time.
Man, you need to set your goals higher, let me tell you. Drew, how are things going at the Attorney General's office? And give an overview on your office. How many people are out there, and what do you all do in general?
Well, by and large, things are going well in the Attorney General's office. We have a total staff of about 160. About 82 of those are lawyers. The largest single section in our office is General Counsel, which gives advice and counsel to all the state agencies of government. And then they have 25 lawyers in that section, and then 18 lawyers each in litigation and criminal appeals. And then the rest of the sections in the office have 3 or 4 each. Things are busy, things are good, spirits are good, and the work is rewarding.
What's the volume of work like? And does it compare to a large law firm? I mean, 82 lawyers would be a pretty significant law firm if it were a private entity in the state of Oklahoma.
It would be one of the largest law firms in the state if it were a private law firm, and the workload reflects that. Our people are pretty busy. Our criminal appeals section handle all the appeals in all the courts in all 77 counties.
Wow.
So that's quite a bit. Our litigation section represents the state every time someone in a state vehicle has a traffic accident, every time someone files a wrongful discharge suit. Our office provides the representation, so we stay pretty busy.
Let me ask you about how you recruit and hire your lawyers. What kind of process do you go through to try to locate lawyers, either brand new ones or some with experience, and get them on board?
Well, several different ways. Typically, we advertise in the Bar Journal. And
that's the Oklahoma Bar Association Journal.
Yeah, that's correct. And when we have an opening, we place an ad there, and we usually get a lot of responses on that. And then we get, as time goes on, we get unsolicited ads. People just write in, send a resume, and want to be considered if there comes an opening. We've never had any trouble recruiting to the Attorney General's office. It's a fun place to work. It's a rewarding place to work. We have had trouble keeping people after they get 5, 6, 7 years of experience because they can earn so much more. They can earn more in private practice, and something that I find a little bit frustrating, they can earn more working for other agencies of state government than they can earn as an assistant attorney general. So we lose people to other state agencies once they become well trained.
Well, let me ask you about the current legislative session and House Bill 1879, which I can summarize briefly as saying it's a bill introduced that would limit your power to bring actions to enforce Oklahoma law and require, on occasion, you to get permission to do it. Can you tell us about that?
Well, House Bill 1879 would require, before the Attorney General could initiate litigation, that they receive advance approval from either the legislature or either house of the legislature or the governor of the state. And since the legislature is only there February to May, 8 months out of the year, that would require the Attorney General to get a green light from the governor before we could sue anybody. Now, as a mechanical matter, we could probably do that. Whether or not that's good government, to require those who are in more political positions than the Attorney General is to be making decisions about whether or not litigation is filed, I think is a bad idea. Something else the bill does that has received very little mention, our ability to control litigation once we get in it is removed in that bill. It gives us the ability to steer or control litigation only if it's criminal. So if there are multiple agencies involved in a civil lawsuit and the Attorney General is involved, the Attorney General is no longer in charge, which changes nearly 100 years of law in the state of Oklahoma.
Well, let me ask you to analogize that and the effect it would have on you to another situation, and that is, let's just say, for instance, the District Attorney of Oklahoma County, Wes Lane, is considering filing an action, civil or criminal. There's no requirement, is there, that the local DAs get approval from anybody to exercise their prosecutorial discretion?
There is no requirement at all that the DA go to the Board of County Commissioners or to the City Council to get a green light to file litigation. Neither is that requirement placed on any attorney general in the United States, including the 5 who are appointed by governors. Even the ones who are appointed by governors are not required to get the consent of the governor before they file a civil lawsuit. Neither is the Attorney General of the United States, who is appointed by the President. As a matter of fact, it is improper for the White House to interfere in the litigation decisions of the Attorney General of the United States.
Well, without getting too detailed in any kind of a constitutional discussion, do you have some concerns that this proposed bill might have some constitutional impediments?
Well, I think the part that requires the Attorney General to get the consent of the legislature is fairly clearly unconstitutional. That is a legislative infringement on the actions of the executive branch.
Separation of powers.
Separation of powers, and I think it would be held so. The part about requiring us to get the consent of the governor, I believe, is constitutional. We're both in the executive branch. The legislature could require me to jump through whatever hoops they want to set as far as the executive branch is concerned, leaving the question of whether that's good government or not.
Yeah. Negotiation with the poultry companies. Why don't you give us an overview over that entire issue and your role in the process?
Well, and to bring your viewers up to speed on it, we're talking about our allegation that because of the proliferation of poultry houses in western Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma, that the waters of eastern Oklahoma have been damaged. Poultry litter is an excellent fertilizer, but when it runs off, it also fertilizes the water, and that causes growth of plants in the streams, and that damages those waterways.
Is this poultry waste untreated, entirely untreated, just being thrown out on the ground?
It is untreated. It is spread on the ground primarily as fertilizer, and it's an excellent fertilizer. But when you spread more than the land needs to fertilize a crop, eventually it's going to run off and get into the streams, and that's what the whole fight is about. The city of Tulsa brought litigation over their watersheds, Uchi and Spavinaw, that provide drinking water to the city of Tulsa. And as a result of that litigation, the poultry companies are trucking out 80% of the poultry litter that used to be land applied is now being removed from those basins. We think the same thing needs to be done in the other basins of eastern Oklahoma.
Let me jump in here and get us to a break. We are visiting with Drew Edmonson, the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. We'll be back with more of The Verdict right after this.
This is an important notice for diabetics. Great news! Now, if you control your diabetes with the diabetic pill, insulin, or diet and exercise, you may be able to receive your supplies at no cost to you. That's right, no cost to you. Call right now for details.
You may be eligible to receive your supplies at no cost to you.
If you're on Medicare or have private insurance, you may eliminate your out-of-pocket expense. Call the Diabetic Service Foundation right now for important details.
1-800-508-9773.
American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers, as always. Drew Edmonson, the State Attorney General, is our guest. We were talking about the poultry issue when we left. What's the history of this? I don't suppose this is a new issue that just cropped up here in the last couple of years.
This is not brand new, Mick. We started negotiating with the poultry industry. I think the first meeting I personally attended was in November of 2001. I've been to meetings in Arkansas, meetings in Oklahoma. At the outset, we told the industry, the poultry companies, that if they would agree to accept the responsibility for removing the excess litter from the basin and have that embodied in a consent decree, that's all we were asking. We weren't asking for damages, we weren't asking for attorney fees. We said, if you'll agree to do that, that's all we want. And they steadfastly refused. Well, we finally, in July of last year, hired private counsel to litigate. And since then, they've been a little more responsive to our demands. And we're still hopeful that this can be negotiated. But we will litigate if necessary to protect our streams. And now we're asking for damages.
This is civil litigation, obviously.
Civil litigation, yeah. Correct.
Let's change the subject.
Sure.
And talk about the tobacco settlement that you were instrumental in bringing about a number of years ago that has brought an awful lot of money to the state of Oklahoma. Can you kind of give us an update on how the money's coming in, how it's being used, and is there any assessment on the use of the money as being effective?
The money is still coming in and it's being utilized effectively. You can't talk about the settlement without talking about the Tobacco Trust. Yes. We settled the case in November of '98.
And for how much?
It was projected at a little over $2 billion over the next 25 years.
Just for Oklahoma?
Just for Oklahoma. In 2000, the voters of the state of Oklahoma, in their wisdom, decided to place the bulk of that money into a constitutional trust and only allow the interest to be spent, and only the interest spent on health matters. And so since then, the bulk of that money has been going into the trust, and it increased from 50%, it'll cap out at 75% of the annual check goes into the trust, with the balance going into the general fund to be appropriated by the legislature.
Well, if you follow that money, where does it end up? When you say it's going to health-related issues, who gets it?
The part that's appropriated so far has also only been spent. There's no limitation on it. They could spend it on roads if they wanted to. But so far, the legislature and the governor have spent that money on health issues. They've spent it on Medicaid. They've spent it on other health initiatives. The money that's in the Tobacco Trust has, and keep in mind, we can only spend interest. So we haven't been spending millions up to now. We've been spending hundreds of thousands. And just now starting to spend millions. Has funded the Quit Smoking Health Line, where you can call up if you need help to stop smoking. Just now funded a series of grants that go out to rural communities for community-based programs on stopping to smoke. And eventually, the interest off that trust will be greater than the annual payment that we'll receive from the tobacco companies. So that was a very smart thing for the people of this state to do. We don't get good grades on it yet. When they do national surveys of what states are doing, because we're only spending interest, they say, well, you're only spending a small amount of money on anti-tobacco issues. And they aren't looking at the fact that we are actually spending 70% of our money on health-related matters, but so far we haven't been able to spend the principal, we're only spending the interest.
And we'll have it for decades
we'll have it
to spend.
Forever.
Yeah.
Until the people of the state change the Constitution and undo that trust mechanism.
We always hear the term multi-county grand jury. Why does that exist? I guess basically it sounds like it's a grand jury that's made up of people from more than one county, but why do we have them and what do they do?
The multi-county grand jury actually is made up of people from more than one county. The authority to do that is actually in the Constitution, where the Attorney General can convene grand juries on either a single county or a multi-county basis. To my knowledge, it never got done until Robert Henry was Attorney General and asked for and received a statute that set up a mechanism for impaneling a multi-county grand jury. Under that mechanism, we do send out notices, and people come in from across the state who sit on the multi-county grand jury. They will serve for a year to a year and a half, 2 or 3 days a month, every month, and do some pretty interesting stuff. It was the multi-county grand jury under Susan Loving that investigated the governor on campaign contributions, and it was the multi-county grand jury.
That was Governor Walters.
That was Governor Walters. It was the multi-county grand jury during my administration that investigated the health department, has investigated Carol Fisher, leading to indictments and his ultimate departure from office. Day by day, they give help to sheriffs, chiefs of police, and DAs across the state on investigation of crimes.
Now, could a multi-county grand jury consider a potential crime or a fact situation involving, for instance, only Cleveland County?
We say they can. The Constitution, where it gives the powers of the Attorney General vis-a-vis grand juries, says either multi-county or single county, all nature and grades of crimes. There was a court decision from the Court of Criminal Appeals just a few years ago that said, no, it's a multi-county grand jury, the crime has to be multi-county in nature. In response to that, the legislature amended the statute to make it clear statutorily that it could be either single county or multi-county.
So that legislature expanded your power?
That legislature expanded the powers of the multi-county grand jury.
Yes.
And that got done. That statutory amendment has not yet been tested in court, but we believe it's consistent with the constitutional grant of power and would be upheld.
We could spend a lot more time on that, but I want to, if you don't mind, change gears a little bit and talk about the increase in the amount of gambling and the type of gambling that's going on in Oklahoma with different kinds of machines, now card games being authorized in Indian casinos. Do you anticipate any increase in crime or organized crime in Oklahoma because of the increased gambling?
Well, I would preface by saying anywhere there's money, there's going to be crime. Yeah. And no matter what kind of enterprise you're in, if there's an opportunity for somebody illegally to make money off of it, there's at least going to be an attempt to do that. I feel pretty good about the safeguards that were built into the lottery proposal. We had a chance to review that before it was passed by the legislature and submitted to the people. There were changes made in the initial proposal to allow a % of the money to be set aside to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation and the state auditor, so we could have funded oversight by those agencies of state government on the operations of the lottery. The initial proposal didn't have that. We have it now, and I think that's a good thing. So we have an opportunity to keep track on how the lottery operates and to make sure that if someone does attempt to take advantage of it, the mechanism is there to catch them and prosecute.
Let me go beyond the lottery and go to gaming machines or card games. Do we have a similar ability to oversee?
We have some oversight, but most of that is going to be taking place on Indian country, in Indian casinos, through the compacts that will be entered into between the Indian nations and the governor. The primary jurisdiction on those are going to be the FBI, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Commission. Federal courts will have to do the oversight on most of those operations. We do get some oversight to make sure that whatever share the state of Oklahoma is supposed to receive is properly accounted for and received. But as far as any potential criminal activities, that's going to be federal authorities.
Okay.
We're almost out of time. I'd like to give you a few seconds, though, to talk about end-of-life issues, 30 seconds or so. Is your office dealing with that?
Oh, thank you, Mick, because that is an issue that's close to my heart. We started a Attorney General's task force to examine end-of-life issues, and we expect to receive their report next month. And basically, we're looking at this: someone with a terminal condition, will their wishes be known and honored? If they have an advance directive, if they've made decisions about either whether to have life or prolonging machinery or not, will those wishes be known and honored when they go into medical care? Will their pain be managed? Will they receive adequate pain treatment for whatever pain they're suffering? And will they receive competent care? We've had a panel of experts looking at those questions and those issues. I look forward to receiving their report, and there may be some things we have to do to make sure consumers of health care at the end of life get the kind of health care they deserve.
Sounds like another edition of The Verdict. We need to have him back when that task force resumes.
Would love to do it.
Appreciate that. Drew Edmonson, one of our favorite guests here on The Verdict. Kent and I'll be back with a final word right after this. Drew, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Heritage Hall, an independent college preparatory school. Here we celebrate our scientists, our athletes, our mathematicians, and our future artists.
Our students love to learn. A welcoming school for children aged 3 through grade 12. We are a community. We are a family. We are Heritage Hall.
Having trouble finding that great outdoor adventure? KSBI is your #1 source for hunting and fishing shows. We've got the best of the best, and you're right along for the hunt. Watch them bring home that prize trophy and fight to keep that enormous fish from becoming the one that got away. Plus expert advice and tips to add to your arsenal. Saturday is Outdoor Adventure Day right here on KSBI, family television for Oklahoma.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
You're looking at a remarkable gardening tool. It's the Mantis Tiller Cultivator. It weighs only 20 pounds, so you'll never have to battle big, bulky rototillers again. That's because the compact Mantis Tiller packs more power per pound than you might have thought possible. The patented Mantis tines dig in at 240 revolutions a minute, about twice as fast as those heavyweight machines. The Mantis Tiller is also perfect for work in tight areas, in vegetable gardens, in flower gardens, and around shrubs and bushes. The Mantis Tiller even has optional attachments to handle all kinds of gardening chores, from clipping hedges to trimming edges. This really is a remarkable machine. And here's a remarkable offer. Purchase a Mantis Tiller direct from the factory, use it for a year, and if you don't absolutely love it, send it back and we'll refund your money. No ands, ifs, or buts. You won't find that kind of guarantee anywhere else.
For free information about the remarkable Mantis Tiller, call 1-800-442-5335.
Welcome back to The Verdict with Drew Edmonson's a fantastic guest.
Always interesting, always has something worthwhile to talk about, and he does a grand job, as do his associates.
We have a website where you can get more information from Drew Edmondson and his office. It is oag.state.ok.us. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. See you next time on The Verdict.